Hi, this is Angela. I'm currently with Tim, our Mayor, and Matt, the Deputy Mayor of Totnes, here on Heritage Day at the beautiful Guildhall. I'd like to introduce them both, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the heritage and the importance of maintaining these kinds of events for people to be able to come and see what's going on, as well as music and culture. Tim, perhaps you might like to start by telling us a little bit about your mayoral role and how important you see that for the town.
So the mayoral role is essentially, it's kind of like three roles in one. There's one which is just being a councillor, which, because you can't be mayor without being a councillor already. Then the other side of it is the civic side of it, openings, events and so on. And then the final part is being part of the senior leadership of the body corporate that is the council. So I wear different hats, but in the context of this, it's very much the civic aspect of the role, which my belief is that it's important for the mayor to be visible and to be engaged with the town. It's no good having the mayor who just sits in an office and goes to meetings and nobody knows who they are and what they do. And so today is a great opportunity to do that really civic stuff of being out, walking the town, meeting people. So far, we've been to a number of the venues open today. After this, we'll be going around the remainder, so we visited them all and made sure that everybody has had that mayoral input in the day. To show that it's supported, but also to sort of, I think, encourage other people to get involved as well. There's nothing quite like a silly hat and a red robe to get people to come into a room and engage with things. So, yeah.
I was going to draw to that point second. We have got some lovely photographs being taken here, but I wanted to draw attention really to the role of ceremonial wear or garb or costume or whatever you might want to call it, because we're sat here with Tim, who's wearing these glorious red robes and this very impressive gold chain, and Matt, who's wearing very similar, but unfortunately doesn't have quite as fantastic a chain as Tim. Yeah. Would you like to talk about, or do you know about, the origin of these costumes that you're wearing, how old they are, where they're kept, those sorts of things? Matt, maybe we'll start with you.
The age,
I think it's mostly Victorian, actually. Yeah. I think a lot of the kind of ceremony stuff that we have is Victorian pomp that was invented. If you look at the photos of old mayors going back, there's suddenly, in the early Victorian era and before, there's a chain, but there's none of the robes and the ribbons and the hat and stuff. But Victorians like that kind of thing.
Yes, as an ex-funeral director, I can tell you that the Victorian costume has very much to do with how we have dressed our funerals. Up to fairly recently, it's been very, very Victorian too. Why do you think it is that the Victorian era has had such an impact? Do you think it's just because it was a time when Britain was so dominant in the world?
Good question. I'm not entirely sure. I think there's an element of... I think regardless of whether it was the Victorians, it's just that cyclical thing. We're only 150, 200 years out. So that period to us now seems like the austere and important and aged and antique. Whereas if we were all dressing like it was the 1600s, I think that would seem quite out of place. We were wearing ruffs and I can't think what they're called, those funny little
those big sort of
breeches.
Pantaloons, yes.
And things like that.
Although I will mention that we do have an Elizabethan market that does have, we do have these costumes still in Totnes, which is quite popular.
But I think there is a degree to which as well, I mean, you look at other councils around the country, that this kind of stuff is becoming less popular. And because it does make councils... the perception is that they make them harder to engage for the public to engage with. If you go into a meeting and everybody's wearing chains and robes and stuff, they don't feel like you, and they feel. And I think that so a lot of councils have taken an approach of getting rid of a lot of that stuff, making meetings feel more welcoming to the public, and that's the first stage in that, is by showing that councillors are just like, because we are members of the public. We're volunteers.
So, Matt, I've noticed that I would say you look quite young to be. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you came to be involved in the council, and how old are you?
So I'm 34. I think it largely came from, I come from a family, a local family, sort of born and raised in and around Totnes, and I've had other family members. My father was a community firefighter for most of my life. You mentioned the Elizabethan market. My grandmother was heavily involved in that before she passed. And so I think it was just kind of following them a little bit and trying to do some sort of public service in the town and sort of give back to the town a little bit. And the council is the way I sort of ended up choosing to do that.
So practically speaking, what is the council able to do in terms of actually legislation within a town?
So very little. So we're the lowest rung of government. We're a town and parish councils. We're right at the bottom, but we're the closest to the public.
Yeah.
We're that first line of communication. Whilst we don't have very many actual duties, such as the higher tiers of higher authorities, such as county and district, who have things like education and roads and healthcare, what we do have is a lot of powers to spend. So town and district councils can actually affect a lot of change on the ground in their communities through those powers, but they're not actual statutory responsibilities. So many particularly more with smaller parish councils, have an approach of they keep their council tax precepts as low as possible. They will hold their hands up and say, our only responsibility is the village green and the cemetery, which is technically correct. And then they're done. And they have their four statutory meetings a year, and that's it. We take a different approach here, in that we recognise that increasingly the services from the authorities above us are failing, and that we are in a position to, as much as we can, plug those gaps, and that we feel that that's our responsibility. Is the sort of, I don't want to sound too what's the word, not patriarchal, but that will do, proprietorial, actually, maybe is more the word, over the town. But at the same time, we have a statutory responsibility to bring in council tax. We can set what that is. We can make the choice through consultation with our parishioners to set that council tax higher, so that we can then do more things. So, for example, here in Totnes, we now have 2.5 2 full-time and 1 part-time town maintenance officers who go around and do things as simple as cleaning of public staff, repairing of our council assets, just those kind of small jobs around town that often get overlooked, because other councils will say, well, it's not our responsibility, and then no one really knows whose bench is that.
Yes.
So having these offices is really good, and again, it's that very visible in the town. People see them doing stuff. We get lots of nice feedback about the work that they do. Putting up bunting.
Yes.
Watering the planters.
Yes.
These small jobs need to be done.
As I say, I think something I've found, at least personally as a councillor as well, that I've ended up doing a lot, which I think is really helpful, is a lot of signposting. I think as a member of the public, it's easy to see that, like, the council or the government is this one big amorphous thing. So when members of the public are having issues or concerns, it's hard to sort of navigate that system. So, like I say, at least personally as a councillor, I've had a lot of situations where someone's come to me with a concern. I said, right, well, this is a central government issue. You need to speak to this person, or it's a county level problem. You need to speak to that. But helping people navigate government a little bit when they've got issues or concerns that need addressing.
So, between the two of you, what would you? This is going to go out to Solfi, and it's really to give an idea of kind of what's special about Totnes. What would both of you say you found most special about this town?
I moved here. I married into a local family, and for me, I grew up in London. 8 million people. Totnes at the time when I moved here had a population of about 8,000. We even estimated that the one road that we lived on in London had half the population of Totnes living on it. Now, to me, that's normal. I grew up like that, and I never thought I'd leave the city. Increasingly, when I came to visit my wife here, and also as I got older, and my lifestyle changed in London, it was realising that actually in many ways I didn't leave the borough, my little village, in scare quotes, in London, apart from to go to work. I thought, well, actually, maybe living in a small town isn't really that different. I moved here. We made the move here. I mean, I'll argue that mostly in terms of, the classic wanting a better life for our children.
Yeah.
But since I've been here, it's the overwhelming sense of community. I know all my neighbours. I know more than just my neighbours. I struggle to. I mean, anyone who lives in Totnes will tell you to walk down the high street on a Friday or a Saturday morning when the market's on is you're taking your timekeeping in your hands, because you're going to bump into 10 or 15 people. Everyone's going to want to stop and have a chat. When you've got the time for it, it's great. And I think that's what really helps keep Totnes what it is that sense of community. That there's all you can go out to any cafe or bar or just sit in the civic square in town, and within 20 minutes you're likely to see someone you know and be able to have a chat. And that's something that I might have lived in a city of 8 million people. I only knew 2 of my neighbours. And I lived in London for 30 years, or the road that I grew up on where I lived for 30 years, everyone had moved away. Yeah. So the community that we had gone. Yeah. Whereas, like Matt's family have been here.
Well, I was going to come to you, Matt. I was going to mention that you've said you were a local family, and from what you were saying, your family have had roots in this town for a really long time. It's a very different experience of Totnes that you may have had, because you've been to school here, I presume.
Yes. Yeah. So I actually went to school in Bury Pomeroy for primary school, and then to Quebec for secondary. But yeah, my family's been sort of in and around Totnes for generations. And for me, what's special with Totnes, I think, I often say it in a joking way, but it's somehow found this way of staying exactly the same, but also being completely different. It's sort of, it does move with the times and things change, but there's still that part of it where it just feels exactly the same as, 30 years ago when I was a child. It's protected its uniqueness and its heritage, but still, like I say, keeping up with modern times. And
I like to think, this building we're in, the Guildhall, I often like to say that it was part of the Priory. It was part of the Priory. Some of the original building remains. It subsequently was destroyed and rebuilt in the Reformation. It's been a Guildhall, a school. It was a magistrates' court for nearly 400 years, until 1974, when it became the seat of the town council after the last round of local government reorganisation. So this building has been a municipal building for 1,000 years. Yeah. Right in the heart of you cannot be more central than Totnes. But like Matt says, it's changed. When this was a magistrates' court, we used to send children to be whipped. Yeah. We used to send people to Australia for stealing we've got a whole display for stealing a petticoat. Wow. Whereas now the town council sits here, and our approach is very different from our Victorian, again the Victorians, our Victorian fort, and those before them, in that our approach now is not one like that. And what goes on in this room is genuinely, we actually don't meet in this room anymore, but is genuinely comes from a place of trying to make Totnes the best it can be for everybody here, young, old, able-bodied, etc., and create an inclusive and equitable living experience for everybody here, which I don't think is the attitude of many of the 500 odd names on the board behind me.
Scary photos of some people there that are very imperious looking, I have to say. It's been really a pleasure to meet both of you. I mean, I guess coming from these two different, you're what we might have called in Totnes a blow-in.
I am a blow-in, yes.
And somebody who's very local. I'm a local person, but I've blown out and blown in again. Yeah. So.
Well, I like to also, apropos of what Matt was saying, so the family I'm married into, they're in the Doomsday Book.
Oh, my goodness.
They are proper local, although more Dartington. Yes. And I find that incredible. Yes. To be able to trace one's family back in the same 4 square miles.
Yeah, that's really unusual these days.
It is.
What would your message be to our people in Salford? I know that the mayor, for example, is very keen to have a Zoom with you, Tim, maybe to exchange ideas and things that are about preserving this culture and this heritage, which in Totnes is so important. What message might you have for those people in Salford, just to end our lovely discussion today, and from you, Matt?
I mean, me personally is ultimately is a message of solidarity. Is that I'm conscious of political biases and so on, and I want to sort of steer clear of that, which is at the end of the day, from a humanitarian point of view, this is absolutely a case of solidarity with all the residents of Salford. But I think from a governance and leadership point of view, my take on it is actually, it's not for me or Matt or anyone else on the council to make those decisions. It's for us to listen to our community and to act on their beliefs and feelings. And that's where the strength in any government comes from, is support from the community. And I would hope that is that the leaders in Salford, and as I'm led to believe from my colleagues, is the case, are absolutely putting their community first.
Yes, absolutely.
Which I would imagine in this situation they have no choice but to.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Matt. Have you got any message from, Totnes?
I think for me, it kind of circles back to something you mentioned earlier about our age. I think for me, it's really important that youth engage with these sorts of things like local government and things like that. The people who, ultimately, the younger you are, the longer you have to live with the decisions of the government.
That's true.
So those people should be involved in those decisions.
I agree with that so wholeheartedly.
And I think that's really important, is trying to get some youth engagement with government. And
Thank you so much for joining me today, Matt and Tim from Totnes Heritage Day. Thank you for listening.